From the Fatheads Eyewear Studios in Speedway, Indiana, this is The Skinny, brought to you by Toyota, Rhino Classifieds, General Tire, and Dream Giveaway. This segment of The Skinny is brought to you by Toyota.
And welcome to The Skinny. I'm this week's guest host, Michael Young, filling in for Rico and Ken. We welcome you to a great flashback show. We're going to take a look at some of the great guests we've had over the years. We'll kick off today's show with a look at the beginning of the career of Angelle Sampey.
I was married to a guy named Kevin. He went off to the Gulf War, and he had a motorcycle that he didn't want to go bad sitting there. And so he didn't mean for me to take it to the racetrack and drag race it, though. He just meant like take it around the block every once in a while. And when he came home, it was stripped. I mean, stripped to the bone. We had taken the headlight, the blinkers, cut the seat, did everything we could do to it, put wheelie bars on it. I think I had an air shifter. I can't remember. But I was drag racing it. It was not going to be on the street ever again. So he wasn't too happy at first. But, went to the track with me and fell in love with the sport himself, and we started together. So that's where my career began. So thanks to that motorcycle that he left behind, or I probably wouldn't be here today.
Yeah, I read that story, and I'm like, that's pretty cool. A guy comes back, and she did what I asked her to do, I guess. I didn't know she was going to. I didn't know you had stripped it and cut the seat and all that stuff as well. Yeah. I thought you just put a slick and wheelie bars on it.
No more good to the street after that, but. I got off of that bike. I ended up buying a friend's motorcycle. It was a Super Comp, Suzuki Super Comp bike. Did that for a little while, and then found out about Frank Hawley's drag racing school and wanted to go there. Had never been on a big tire bike. That was my biggest fear, but that was completely eliminated after the first burnout. The rest of the story is got hired from Frank Hawley's drag racing school by George and started racing with Star Racing. I mean, my career started when I was 6 years old on dirt bikes. That's where I began racing motocross with my brother and my dad, and it just evolved over my whole life. So I'm completely obsessed and addicted to motorcycles, and started racing against the Vance and Hines team like we talked about before, and wanted to beat them more than anything in the world. And I thought my career was over actually a couple of years ago when lost my deal again and figured it's time for me to stay home again. I had already retired once, and if I retire again, I'm not coming back this time. And then Andrew and Eddie called and asked if I was going to be at the PRI show, and offered to have breakfast with me, which was really strange. Why do these guys even
These guys must be bringing me to make fun of me about losing my gig.
What are you going to do, poison my pancakes? What's going on here?
Exactly. And the really weird part was, so they take me to, what was it, guys? The breakfast joint?
Flapjacks. Yep.
Flapjacks. So it's like, that's where everybody goes to eat breakfast, right? All the racers are in there.
Oh, the best Brownsburg has to offer right there.
Yeah, and they're telling me nobody can know about this meeting we're having. Then what the hell are you taking me to Flapjacks for? So we're in there, and the whole time we're sitting at a table, they're constantly looking at the door, looking up, see who's walking in, who's looking at us. I'm like, this is so weird. I don't know if they're planning to kill me.
We were just looking at a sticker with the bill. We were like, you can tell if somebody's coming and go like this and get the bill and leave.
I really had no idea why I was there. I had thought that maybe they would ask me to ride on the team, and then I laughed at myself because that was just utterly ridiculous. That's never going to happen. I didn't know why they wanted me there. And then we started talking about the possibility of putting a third bike and would I be interested in riding on a team? Yes, that's how fast I answered it. We're thinking about putting a third bike. Would you be? Yes. And they said, well, don't you want to hear what's going on before you say yes? I'm like, nope. Yes.
No, you had me at breakfast.
Yeah. Made her eat donuts. Donuts is like her week. Her week. It's her kryptonite. Let's just say. So
I don't know why they want to get me to get fat, but they're constantly trying to make me eat. And even Andrew, I have so much respect for Andrew. I'll tell you how awesome he is. He had a New Year's resolution that he was going to not have any sauces for the whole year so he could lose a little weight, right? So we get to the very first dinner this year in Orlando, and he orders some sauce dip or something. And I was like, wait a minute. I thought you said no sauces. This was in March, right? 3 months into the New Year's resolution, he goes, oh, that didn't last the first week. So I was like, how am I going to stay on this diet that I want to be on when Eddie's sticking donuts in my face constantly? Andrew's ordering every fattening appetizer on the menu. They should be 240 pounds. I don't understand how they eat what they eat, and they're not big. They're little. You can't even tell. I mean, it's,
They have a
it's
deal
disgusting.
like they have the same deal my wife has with me. Here's the thing: she eats and I gain the weight. It's a partnership. So they've got somebody with them that they eat and then
Yeah.
somebody else gains the weight.
That's funny.
Yeah, I read that that at the age 13, your parents were finally trying to get you off a motorcycle and said, "We have a son, we want a daughter." But it was a battle. You didn't want to do it, and then you've maintained that. So you're also heavily involved in MMA. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's how I met my husband. I was training in MMA. I'm a jiu-jitsu girl, and he did full-blown cage fighting. But that's a true story too. My dad forbid me to ride anymore because he was sick of the tomboy I had turned into. So my mom attempted to put me in beauty pageants, thinking that would fix me. And the only thing it did was made me even more competitive. It was another way to compete. And we found that I was in all these pageants. We were doing 10, 12, 15 a year, and I was getting third runner-up, second runner-up, first runner-up at just about every one, but never queen. And so my mom decided she was going to go in and ask the judges, what could we do to get her over the hill to where she would, get that title? And they told her that one thing we could work on is to get me to talk about something other than motorcycles. Because in my interview, every question they'd ask, I'd somehow lead into talking about motorcycles. But it's just something that I've held true to my whole life. I can hear a motorcycle coming from 5 miles away and nobody else hears it. And then, 5 minutes later, they're like, oh, there it is. I love it. But yeah, I did the pageant thing. We did everything to try to keep me off the bikes, but it never worked. And now my mom and dad are my biggest fans. They fought me for the longest time, but they're the most proud of me now.
We were certainly honored to have the 3-time Indianapolis 500 champion with us, the great Johnny Rutherford. And he shared a story that, honestly, I'd never heard before. An incident at one of the racetracks with a tire and some race fans.
The funniest thing I have ever seen or heard of in racing, believe it or not, after all these years, was still that first year at the Devil's Bowl. I happened to be pitted in the infield in the third turn, so I had a grandstand seat for the witness this. Cars were racing, and the Devil's Bowl was built in a rock quarry, right. And it was the first and second turn were on normal terrain level, and then it kind of went off downhill, not a steep descent, but just downhill to turn 3, which was down in the quarry and around, and there was a heat race out running, and coming off of turn 2 down the back stretch downhill, one of the cars lost a wheel, and it just came off perfect. You could see it down the air, hit the guardrail and bounced, and went right over the catch fence in front of the grandstand up there, and went over that and came down and bounced on the footpath in front, bounced and started up through the grandstand. Right. Well, what I witnessed then was what Moses saw when he parted the Red Sea. The fans just all split apart, and it bounced right up through. And there was a couple at the top, on the top of the stands, and the guy had an amber bottle in his hand.
Oh boy!
And she had her arm linked in his, and just as it bounced far enough in front of them and started over, it would have been just over their heads. This guy yelled, "I've got it!"
Oh, no.
And it was now you see him, now you don't, because he grabbed that thing as it went over their heads.
Oh my God!
And it pulled him off of the back of the grandstands. Fortunately, it wasn't real tall, and they landed on the hood of a car and back behind. But I can still see that wheel heading up through the stands, and this guy yelling, "I've got it!" and then disappearing.
Johnny Rutherford Gold right there, man. That is awesome.
More of the best of the Skinny coming up next. This segment of The Skinny has been brought to you by General Tire. It's more than just a slogan. Anywhere is possible with General Tire. General Tire's Grabber X3 mud terrain tire offers aggressive styling and is engineered for durability with innovative performance features that are ready to carry you through extreme mud, dirt, and rock-covered terrain. For extreme traction that's ready for anything and rugged styling to match, look no further than the Grabber X3. Make your anywhere possible by visiting GeneralTire.com today.
This segment of The Skinny is brought to you by Dream Giveaway. Dream Giveaway has been giving away high-end American muscle cars to raise money for charity since 2007. Dream Giveaway is known for giving away classic and new muscle and paying the federal taxes so the winners don't have to. For $25, you can jump in the game, and part of that goes to charity. You'll have a chance at winning some of the coolest cars on the planet. Check it out at dreamgiveaway.com.
And welcome back to The Skinny. I'm your guest host, Michael Young, and we look back on some of the great interviews that we have done over the years. We had an opportunity to sit down and spend some time with the great Ken Schrader, and he compared some of his crashes between USAC and NASCAR.
I think I've only been upside down 4 times in a Cup car. I've probably been upside down 4 dozen between everything. It ain't no big deal. You know, getting upside down in the Cup car, that's not bad. Running 200 mile an hour at Talladega and then finishing your wreck a quarter mile down the road, that's not bad. Running 120 and stopping in 30 feet, that hurts. That's a big difference. Gordon dumped me one time at Talladega, which was our pride, and he didn't dump me, he just barely bumped me. But I remember in the middle of it, and I thought, like, wow, that wasn't near as bad as I thought it was going to be, because it only turned over 3 or 4 times. And then I look around and reassessed, and we were just real high. And when it came back down, it got worse. But you hit your belts and you got out. So the Cup car was great. And I love watching those Indy cars now. With all the front protection they got, with the windshields and that,
for sure,
whatever they call it, deal above their heads,
the aero screen
makes me
there,
happy to see that. Yeah, the cars still look great, and just someone finally realized that, hey, we ought to protect this guy a little bit.
Yeah, to see those advancements in safety, and that has to be the biggest advancements that you've seen in the sport along the way in the history of your careers. How much safer they are now than they were when you guys first climbed into them.
Oh, yeah. But even when I started, like I first ran my first open wheel car probably in 74 or 5. Since then, they're so much better. But, from when I started racing to the pioneer, I mean, not the pioneers, but the guys in the 60s, man, when what was the real rough year? 64 and 66, weren't they? For
I think so.
USAC open wheel guys. But I mean, yeah, and we're not done yet. They're going to keep coming up with new stuff. Like Mikey Waltrip said one day, he told me, he said, "Do you realize we're going to be able to tell our grandkids that we used to run 200 mile an hour next to a concrete wall? No safer barriers." And you think about it now, that I can't, those are what the dumbasses we were. We didn't know it was okay. We didn't know. The
No
safer
Hans
barrier
device.
alone Well, the safer barrier alone takes about a third of the impact out. So it's just amazing what they've keep coming up with, and they'll keep coming up with more.
The mayor of Hinchtown, James Hinchcliffe, joined us here on The Skinny, and he revisited that horrific crash he had at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
I think it just shows how stupid we are as people to survive something like that and be like, let's go do it again. But no, it was interesting because a lot of people had that question, right? Like, how'd you do it? How'd you get over it? Like, were you afraid to get back in the car, and especially at that track? And when I woke up from what's on the screen behind you there,
and maybe you can take us through it.
well, I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory. Going well, not going so well, going really bad. And when I hit the wall there, so part of the suspension failed. You can see the right front pops up and the car just goes straight in the wall at about 225. Part of the suspension actually punctured the tub and went straight through me. So I was shish kebabbed, quite literally. I was stuck in the car, stabbed by a metal rod that had gotten the whole way through my body. And, that's bad enough on a good day, but when it went through, you can see it pop up there.
Wow.
What happened was it hit my femoral artery in my left leg, and I was bleeding to death. And and they nearly lost me. I lost double the amount of blood my body holds because they kept pumping it in, and I just kept pumping it out.
Oh, wow.
And so that took me out for the rest of the season. You know, I had a bunch of injuries I had to come back from, but I was very fortunate in the sense that I didn't have any memory of the accident itself. It was pretty bad concussion, so I was awake, but I don't remember that, thankfully. And so when I kind of came to in hospital and, you know, slowly started to understand what had happened and appreciate, you know, the magnitude of the situation or whatever, I made a really conscious decision to not associate any of the pain or the injuries or the rehab or any of the unpleasant stuff with a car, with the track, with anything. The way I thought about it in my head was, I got hurt. Doesn't matter how. I got hurt. And now I just have to get better. And that allowed me to not be afraid to get back into a car, because in my head, it wasn't the car that hurt me. I just got hurt. And we went back to the speedway, and everybody, and by that point, I'd been back in the car. The new season had already started. We're a couple races in. I'd already raced on an oval. I'd actually already had a practice crash on an oval. So, like, I'd literally done everything you could do back in a car, good and bad. And I was just approaching May like any other May. Like, I was so far removed from that accident. But you show up there, and of course, that's what the story people want to tell, right? And we got, I think, like the first day of practice, and I was chatting with my team, and I was like, here's the deal, guys. The goal here is we gotta leave this May with a new story to tell. Because I'm 365 days in, I am sick and tired of that story.
Right.
So let's do something. And we did. We went out and we, on the GP, we actually finished on the podium, which was awesome. Led a bunch of laps there, and then managed to put the thing on pole. Like you say, the scariest 4 laps of the year. And team did an incredible job, and Honda did an incredible job. And it was a little bit of a surprise that we had that much pace when it got to Saturday. We were P1 qualifier Saturday, and so we went out last in the Fast 9, and Joseph had put up some crazy times. We're like, okay, so we'll be first 2 rows, you know. And went out, and my first lap was nowhere near as quick as his, but my second lap was quicker than my first lap, and that's not how it goes at Indy.
Right.
And the third lap was only 0.2 slower than that. And so I was doing that math in my head. Like, I knew what Joseph's average was.
Really?
And I'm doing the math in my head while trying to, you know, hang on to this thing and save my life.
Calculator? I mean, were you?
No, I have a travel abacus. I put a small abacus, little handheld deal in my car to do fuel
I pulled
calculations.
my cell phone out. I'm like,
Yeah.
hey.
And so I crossed the line for the last lap. I knew roughly what I needed, but like it comes down to thousandths of a mile an hour there, right? And so I had like the first decimal place sorted, and I was like, "Oh man, that's close." And then they keyed up on my radio, and all I just heard was screaming. I mean, nobody actually said anything. I just heard noise. So I'm like, wow, we did it. That's pretty cool. And that was an awesome moment for sure, because it gave us a new story to tell, and it was such a good thank you for the team, right? I mean, racing's a big family, you know, and yeah, I'm the one that got hurt, but the whole team, that whole group went through that with me. Like, we all went through that together. Like, it's not easy to just be on the sidelines and watch one of your guys get hurt and part of your family be hurt and be out of the season, whatever. So all those guys suffered through it with me and were really supportive of me. And qualifying at Indy is, you know, certainly as much of an exercise in how they prepare the car as it is in how I drive it. And so it was this awesome moment for all of us to just be like, we came back here and we kicked ass. Like, as a group, we did a really good job, and this is something to be really proud of.
More of the best of the skinny coming up next.
This segment of The Skinny is brought to you by Rhino Classifieds. Tired of all those ads and random stuff that shows up when you're looking to buy or sell your car parts? Rhino Classifieds was created just for you. Welcome to a streamlined buying and selling app created by racers for racers and race fans. Modified cars, classic cars, race cars, that special big block you need, the trailer to move your baby around the country in. We got you at rhino.co.
And welcome back to The Skinny. I'm your guest host, Michael Young. We had Scott Dixon, 6-time NTT IndyCar Series champion, with us, and he shared a story about his relationship with his father and how it was a bit tainted, at least one time.
rumor has it that your dad joined the Blue Man crew at one point and was not very happy about it. Can you tell us any of that story?
Yeah, I could tell you about that story. That was at Miller Motorsports Park, and I was, I think, the second or third driver on one of the cars for that weekend. It was in between the IndyCar season. It was an off week for us, and then we had to. It was weird though. We tested like on a Tuesday at the track. And then we had like Wednesday, Thursday off, and then back on track on Friday and for the race weekend. And so we were doing nothing, and then someone's like, "Hey, we've got some moonshine in one of the motorhomes, and there's nothing to do out there." So we're like, "Okay, let's start drinking some moonshine."
Salt Lake City, yeah, that was way at Tooele,
yeah, which is a dry county too. Right. And so then everybody's probably had a few too many, and then my dad, we see him walking over to a Portaloo or Porta-John or whatever it's called, and I was with another person, and they thought it would be quite a funny idea to rock it, so we rocked it, and it was actually sitting on like a curb, so it was on top of the curb. So actually, when we rocked it, I feel like I wasn't the one that rocked it that much, but as it turned out, this thing rocked all the way until it tipped over, and of course it tipped door down, right? So
oh no!
All I remember is like I'm trying to lift this thing off him, and then I see him. He's just covered. He's blue. He looks like a Smurf. And then I see this like bright orange turd sitting right on his chest. Oh! And he's trying to hit me. So I'm like, I put it down again, and I run off. And so yeah, long story short, it was a bad day for my dad. He was not real happy about that, as you can imagine. And actually, that weekend got worse. I think he then got in a car accident in my rental car, which wasn't in his name. Wrote the thing off, and of course somebody had to pay for that too.
The weekend literally turned to crap.
Yeah, for a weekend that I was helping Chip out, not driving for any money, it cost me a lot of money. And my dad still hasn't let that one go.
Your dad's dignity on the way there.
Yeah,
right?
I'm just glad there wasn't many people there that well, I don't think there was anybody there that witnessed it, but he definitely remembers. I remember going to the hotel that night and apologizing, and he was still, for days, he was still a tinge of blue. I don't know how hard it is to watch that stuff off, but I feel extremely bad for that. For
Racetrack
sure.
memories, man.
Oh man, it's yeah. I've tried to let that one go, but that one seems to keep popping up.
Yeah, that won't hang around for a while, I'm sure.
The guys also had a great opportunity to sit down and talk with one of the greats in the NHRA, Antron Brown, and he shares his story with us.
You got to put the work in, and I've always been one of those, I guess it was beaten from my grandpa, man. My grandpa, man, let me tell you something, man. My dad and uncle, is like they gave no false hope. So we had a practice rig at the house growing up, and that's all we worked on. And for me, I'm not one of those type of people that want to come out here to be out here. I'm out here because I want to compete at a high level, and I want to win, and I expect to win. And I want to surround myself with the same people with the same mindset. And if you're with a great group of people that's going that same direction, and they all put the work that you put in, that's when you get those great results. I've been very fortunate with like Brian Karate, Mark Oswald, Brad, all of our Matco, Global Electronic Technology, Toyota gang to really make that happen, man. Like you get all those type of people together, and man, everybody puts their head down, brother. That's when you're able to start making some unbelievable things happen, and that's what it takes.
You came off the bike, went to work for Mike Ashley, right? Is that
no? David Powers. David
Powers. Yeah.
Yeah. That there was one of those deals where it didn't feel real. You get what I mean? Because as a kid, I grew up watching fuel cars, and my family, we were always the sportsman racers. You know what I mean? Like we went there. I used to see Big Daddy, Kenny, Mark Oswald, Jersey, and all that.
Yeah.
Used to see all of them. You know what I mean? That used to be like, they were like the untouchables. You get what I mean? Like you went there and like,
you're in awe.
Like you're like, oh, like, and then I always say, if I could just get a chance to drive one, you get what I mean? And then Lee Beard at the time, when he was working at Schumacher, you always saw me, the work that I put in on the bike program, like being there, helping them dyno the engines, put the bikes together, build them, designing the chassis, and doing all the stuff I did. I was there early in the morning, never left until late at night. And he goes, kid, that's what I want in a car, because my mindset, but I was like, I have to get the opportunity. And then when he went to Powers, he became like the GM there, and he had the opportunity to talk to David about it when like Bazemore was out the seat, and they had an intern driver in the car named David Baca. David Bach, and they're looking for drivers to drive the car, and that's how that all came about, man. It was just like one of those deals where I talked to Lee. Matco's already a little associate deal on my U.S. Army Pro Stock motorcycle at DSR. And I remember telling Don, I said, Don, they're going to give me an opportunity to test the car. He goes, well, go do it, AB. Just don't get your hopes up because there's going to be hundreds of people that's going to be in line for that job. You know what I mean? And I said, well, man, I'm going to give it all I got. And boy, lo and behold, man, I went to Frank Hawley School, got my alcohol license. I went and tested a car in Vegas. And Lee looked at it, he goes, I couldn't tell that you never even drove one of these before because I was burnt out, did all the normal routine stuff. Ain't taking down a track, is doing all the other stuff right to get it to the starting line to take off. And a lot of people don't realize that. And Jay, you know what I'm talking about.
Right.
Trimming the fuel pump, doing all that stuff, putting reverse, not tearing the reverser up, being smooth. Well, I drove big trucks and stuff like that, semis and all that stuff. So it all goes hand in hand. And then once I got that deal happening, man, that's where it just really took off for me because I was like, is this real? Is this really what I'm doing? And then besides that, like the team, we had a remarkable team, like with Mike Dumagala, Brad Mason, all those guys, these seasoned guys came to one team.
Is Brad still with you?
Brad's still with us.
Yep.
And he's been like that rock there, man.
Yep.
And then the year after that, that's when we got Karate and Oswald, and we became that bond that's just been awesome that we got rekindled back together. So it's just one of those deals where you get together with the right people, it makes it fun. And going forward, I'm just living that dream. Living that dream.
What was that like? You'd already been on a Pro Stock bike, very successful there, and knowing how hard those things leave to getting into that fuel car. Do you remember the first time you hit the throttle, what it felt like?
Oh, absolutely. When I hit the gas pedal, I'll tell you what, it got my attention really, really quick. Because the thing about it is, I never felt something that hit like that. But it wasn't the starting line that really got me. What got me is once I got out there past 100 feet, and the car took off again. And then I got to the 250, 300 feet.
The next clutches came in.
It took off harder again while it was already rolling. And then when you got to like 500 feet and the clutch goes 1-to-1, you feel
then it really goes.
And then you're like, oh, snap. You hear Jay tell me, it goes, it's like, snap, snaps you up, whips you back. And you're like, oh, Lord. And you feel it just floating. And he's like, this ain't right. It's like, this car feel like it's off the ground, but it's still moving forward. And it's just sashaying left to right. And you're like, I got to let off. And I let off my first time because I wasn't used to that feeling. Because I said, is this car coming unglued? Is this the way it's supposed to feel?
We hope you've enjoyed this look back to some of the great guests we've had over the years as much as we have. I'm your guest host, Michael Young. We'll have a brand new episode for you next week. We thank you for joining us here on The Skinny.
Thanks for being with us here on The Skinny. This episode has been brought to you by Toyota, Rhino Classifieds, Dream Giveaway, and General Tire. For the latest in sunglasses, optical frames, accessories, and apparel, be sure to check out fatheads.com. That's Fatheads with a Z. Production facilities provided by Fatheads Eyewear Studios. All rights reserved.